I think the big thing about greenroofs for me, and this is what's increasingly I'm beginning to think, is that they're not, in the southeast of England, they're not just a place to think about interesting plant communities, because it's quite difficult in this corner of England, and virtually every year, most of our native plants that are on green roofs are going to get, at some stage, they're going to get burnt off. You know, it's an incredibly hostile environment. So I think there's two things I think we should be looking at green roofs. I think we should be looking at structure on green roofs. So we should be looking at breeding space. So we all our new roofs now, we're putting sand mounds on for ground nesting bees. We're putting log piles on. We're putting pieces of liner that create temporary pieces of ephemeral little ponds on. I think roofs are really useful places to create structure and breeding space that would be very difficult to do on the ground, especially in an urban place, because the disturbance would be too much, or the cats or whatever there'd be. So I think roofs are, I think we're missing a trick if we don't look at roofs as very much more of a structural and a breeding space, and not necessarily put all the emphasis on the plant space, because it's very difficult to, unless you've got more rainfall than we have in this country, it's quite hard to produce a continuous nectar and pollen source on a green roof. At some stage in the southeast, they will be brown, unless you irrigate them. And then the other thing I think we should look at is, alongside the native plants on roofs, which, you know, there's quite a few that perform pretty well, we should be looking at some plants that make sense from a climate change point of view as well, and some plants that will tolerate that level of stress, because it is incredibly stressful. It's not just the drought. I think it's the temperature of the soil. There's no subsoil underneath the green roof. So I think the temperature of the soil has a big effect as well. So we should be looking at some plants that can really hack it in those conditions, which would probably be some, I mean, there's loads of amazing Mediterranean plants. Turkish species we've been looking at and trialing here, some Californian stuff. I think we should be mixing in some climate change stuff and some plants that are going to perform on a green roof amongst the natives. You know, I really think, you know, most of these roofs that go in urban spaces, they're not next to a triple SI site, are they? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and if we want to keep the nectar source going, we've got to have plants that are not going to burn off completely when this heat comes. So I think that's a really interesting place, is looking at the potential subshrubs. For instance, there's some really interesting subshrubs from the Mediterranean areas that would work well. So I think we just need to open our mind up to not just be focused on the plants. I think we should look at the structure and the potential of that space to create wetland, or to create rubble piles or log piles or sand piles would be. I think it's a great place to try that stuff.